Hi, hi everyone. This is Nirari. I'm co-founder of Refugee and Migrant Talent, and today I'll present about Refugee and Migrant Talent platform. So just before we start, I will give you a little bit info about my background and who I am. So I'm arrived to Australia in 2015 as a refugee from Syria. Back in Syria, I had master degree in web science, more than 8 years of experience in IT field. After the Syrian war started in 2011, we stayed in Syria till 2014, and the situation get more and more much harder. So we forced to flee Syria to Lebanon. And since we arrived to Lebanon in 2014, we really faced uncertainty of our residency there, because any refugee in Lebanon with limited resource of the country, they can't give any refugee permanent residency. So we stayed there as temporary residency, and we have to renew it every few months with no work rights back in Lebanon. So the situation was no work rights, temporary residency, and every refugee back in Lebanon, they relied on overseas support, UNHCR support, financially and from the legal side, and also with healthcare. So in Lebanon, we applied for humanitarian visa for to come to Australia. And in 2015, we get approved from Australian government, our visa approved, and we moved from Lebanon to Australia in 2015. We arrived in June as a refugee to Australia. But really, the situation was from uncertainty back in Lebanon to all the challenges of integration and employment and settled here in Australia. So since we arrived, I tried to go back to my profession and rebuild my life again in Australia. Applied more than 100 applications in my field in IT, get rejected more than 100 times because I don't have local experience in Australia. My qualification was overseas and I have no professional network. The settlement service here in Australia, they are doing great jobs in settlement, in housing, in Medicare, in helping newly arrivals to have their documents ready with the government. But really the employment remain the number one challenge for any newly arrivals. And I soon realized that it's not just me. This problem is not just my problem. There is hundreds of thousands of newly arrivals to Australia facing exactly the same challenge. And if you look at Australian data, you will find that more than 60% of newly arrivals to Australia, they are unemployed even when they arrive more than 5 years of their arrival to Australia. They stay unemployed to Australia. And that unemployment is not just someone with no job, with no jobs and looking for a job. It really means there is many consequences for the unemployment in the community, because anyone have no jobs in Australia. It's very hard to integrate the Australian community, to understand the Australian community, and also unemployment lead to other bad things in the community, such as like drug addictive and also domestic violence. So really, the employment is the main element of the settlement. With no employment, there is no real settlement. And maybe here we can just see what of the Henry Ford said about is start Henry Ford Motors in US, and one of the main quotes he said is, "Nobody can think straight who doesn't work, because idleness wrapping the mind." And this is exactly what's the problem in Australia. So after a few months, I heard about event named Tech Refugees, and the hackathon was built around how they can help newly arrivals to resettle in their new home. When I heard about this event, it was about using technology and help newly arrivals from refugees and asylum seekers and migrants to resettle in their new home in Australia. So from there, I went to the event, and there with no really idea about what would be the outcome of this event. And for me, it was just attending to see what the different ideas is, what technology can do to help refugees. And there I met my co-founder, Anna. And And the format of the event was like every few people have to form groups, and each group have to discuss certain problem and try to utilize technology to overcome this barrier for newly arrivals. So how technology can play a role and help those new arrivals to Australia. Me and my co-founder Anna were in the same group, and we agreed that employment is one of the main challenges of anyone arriving to Australia. So we formed the group, we discussed this idea, and we decided to build just small catalog for refugees. And that catalog, our solution was we will put this catalog online, and we will help refugees to create profile and add their data, plus upload their resume, and make this resumes available for the employer and see if there is any interest of those resumes. So since we start this solution, we put the solution online in 3 months, and how it's work, we provide the business with a portal. The business can log in and search for certain skills, for example, civil engineer, and they can find who's in Australia from newly arrivals. They have these skills, and the employer have also overview about the candidate profile. They can see their skills, experience, education. These data we remain remain anonymous for the employer, so they don't have access to the personal details, contact for like real name, phone numbers, address. All these personal details are hidden from the employer. So the employer are only focused on the skills, experience, and education. And when they click on overview, they can see overview about the candidate with the candidate number. They can see their skills, their experience, their qualification, and then the employer can decide either to download this resume forward to the HR manager, or maybe they can shortlist this candidate for any position they have. Since we applied this model in 1 year, we have really many success stories. More than 150 candidates we employed in Australian businesses across the states, like in New South Wales, Victoria, Canberra, Queensland, in different states. So this success model was really for us was validating our idea that those talents, there is huge source of talent are hidden from the employer in Australia, just because they are like newly arrivals. They have no professional network, they don't have local experience. So from the employer point of view, they can't see them, because they are all dealing with their day-to-day lives, like settlement service, finding housing, medication, and they're not focusing in the employment when they first arrive to Australia. So since we built this catalog and we provide this data for the employer, we found that there is a huge interest of those this data, and then there is more than 150 candidates we employ. This solution has with this solution we had like many impacts. So for the business, this solution provide alternative source of talent, plus they can increase their diverse workforce and their business, and also for the new arrivals, refugees and migrants using this solution, they found that access to the employment is much easier, and for them finding employment is just risking someone's lives and help them to rebuild their profession again. The main problem in Australia, if you just for example, if you order any Uber driver or any Uber taxi, you'll find most likely you will find the driver is from the refugee or migrant background, and they are like engineers, doctors, back in their home, but they didn't have a chance to really to go back to their profession. So they had to change their profession to something else, because no one gave them a chance. So using this system, we really give them a chance to start their profession back in Australia, and also to be like employed in Australia. And for the host country like Australia, the benefit of this solution was for the community. They have now the unemployment rate in this refugee and migrant community decreased, so that they have much less domestic violence, much less unemployment rate, and also for the economy. If someone gets a job, they are now converting from someone taking benefit from the government to someone paying tax, start paying tax when they arrive. But this solution, we found that this solution was really focused on Australian community, and how we can help solve this problem in Australia. But this problem is not just in Australia. If you look at a large picture or bigger picture of this problem, you'll find this problem is one of the world's biggest challenges. There is more than 79.5 millions of displaced people in the world, across from Asia to Africa to different regions in the world. And this 65 million number, this 79 millions is now more than 3 times of the Australian population. So the problem is keep increasing every day, and those people are really huge huge source of experience and skills. They are untapped experience and skills are sitting at camps and doing nothing there. So in the camp situation is all these 79 millions have limited access to the medical services. Plus, they have no employment, no legal work in most of the camps across the world. Plus, in the more developed country like Europe, Australia, and US, it's 38% of the employers they are unable to fill the skilled roles. And in Australia, you have many long list of the skills shortage from in IT, in construction, in health, and all these skills shortage because we don't have in Australia enough people have those skills. So the idea was how we can scale this online solution and make it something work globally, and how we can make this solution work so we can connect the employer in Australia or other countries to the camps in different places in the world. So when we start looking at this problem, we realized that we can't solve it by ourselves because it's such a huge problem, and also it's not just the resource limitation, is also the legal limitation. So some countries have different legal aspects or legal laws. They can't accept refugees or migrants in all the situations. They have to meet certain criteria. So we realize that this problem is not just we can't solve it as one organization. So we have to work with different organizations to solve this problem. When we start research about this problem and who is there around the world trying to solve it, we met with the organization named Talent Beyond Boundaries, and they are non-for-profit organizations start in US. They are working in Jordan and Lebanon in the camps, and what they're doing there is they just collecting all this information about refugees who registered in Lebanon and Jordan and their resumes and experience and skills, and sorted and stored in centralized database. So one of the main challenges if we deal with the global problem is to have one source of info, to have centralized database. One of the main challenges is really to have centralized database, because every organization in every country are doing some sort they're having some sort of solutions for this employment problem, but really there is no global solution, and they are not talking to each other. So every country developed their own social enterprises, their own businesses, their own non-for-profit organizations to solve employment, but there is no global solution. And if you are talking about a global solution, we really don't want to organize this accessibility for the info, how we can make the employer access this data, and how we can really be in the same page, so everyone access the same data. How we can make this data unified and centralized, and this is the main idea around Talent Beyond Boundaries. How they can collect this all this info and store it in one central database, and then provide access to the other organizations. So when we met with them, we chatted about linking our system in Australia with the global database. So what we did is, where after a few months of working with them, we formed the link between the system in Australia and this international database, and we provide the same experience for the employer. So for example, the employer in our system, they can search domestically, plus they can search also for international candidate. For example, if the employer log in and search for Java developer, you can find Syrian refugees, for example, in Lebanon, and they all anonymized data. We only provide the candidate number, and it's the same experience for the employer. They can search domestically and international, and if they click the view profile, they can see all their skills and experience, even those which are in the camps in Jordan, Lebanon, but their skills and experience are all visible around the world. So when the employer see all this international talent, and for example, Java developer, there is shortage of skills in developers in Australia, they decided to hire someone, and they found someone in international from international candidate. Then they can download their resume or request interview. This request interview triggered sort of like few events for coming to us and TBB and other organizations. So we work together to set up remote hiring model, where the employer can remotely interview the candidate. They can set them also some sort of test, and we can monitor this test through TBB Talent Beyond Boundaries offices in Jordan, Lebanon. So it will be monitored, this test, and the employer can check the skills and experience. And then if the employer are happy with one of the candidates and decide this candidate is a great fit to my organization and I want to hire this one, then we will work with the government to facilitate all these visa applications and help those people to have their visa and arrive to Australia. And this all with the help of the government, because if you look at the refugee resettlement, most of them are escaped their countries with no documents. So some of them they only have a short amount of time to escape because of the war. So most of them they arrive to host country with no documents. It's very hard for them to obtain like reference from their previous employer, or to obtain, for example, a original copy of their qualifications. So all of these barriers is make it very hard for them to access the formal pathway for skilled migration, because you don't meet all these requirements. So we really work with the government very closely to form some sort of pathways for those people to arrive in Australia. So until now we settled more than 5 families in Australia with this program. We moved from the camps to Australia based on their skills and experience, and with the help of the government, UNHCR, settlement service in Australia, and also data provided by Talent Beyond Boundaries. So why the companies are interested in this model? They're interested in this model because there is in this 79 million population, those people are not just, they have new labels as a refugee, but previously they were teachers, engineers, and they have different skills and experience, and they can be really huge human capital for the new home or a new country. So when they arrive, they bring with them all their skills, their experience, and they can really benefit the host country with their skills and experience. So forming this model is exactly, we are applying the skilled migration model, but we tuned and we adapt this model to meet the refugee status. So someone have no document, someone has unemployed for 1 year or more. It's very hard for them to access the migration pathway, so they have to access. We form a new pathway for them as a refugee to Australia. And when we start this solution, we start the solution as for refugee talent, this platform, and linked with Talent Beyond Boundaries. And quickly we scaled this solution. Now our solution is white labeled to other organizations in Australia, like Spectrum, and also a multicultural Australia. So we white label this solution for other settlement service, not just to only help our client, but also we help them to provide technology for their client. So we utilize this technology not just for us, but also for other organizations to help their client. And this is exactly what we do with Refugee Talent, is provide this this online solution for them. And this solution is web-based, and like 100% now is working in Australia, and we prove that it's working international. This is exactly what we are doing with refugees and migrant talent. So if there is any, if you want to find more about this or our solution, you can visit our website refugeetalent.com. And if there is any question, I'm happy to answer.
Awesome. All right, we got a couple of questions in chat. We have two from Nicholas. Firstly, have there been any legal hurdles in unlocking all of this talent?
For the legal side, we face the legal side just for international pathway, because from international pathway is very complicated, and the countries is not used to really mobilize refugees based on their skills. So everyone was looking at refugee as just humanitarian problem. They never looked at the refugee status as really opportunity for the host country to have all these skills. So they didn't have pathways for skills, and all their pathways about skills migration was formed just based on someone have everything right, have no unemployment history in 5 years, have their document ready, have everything is ready, all the checklist, and have their English language meet a certain requirement. So all this checklist, if you apply it for, if you map it to refugee status, it's very hard. You find the refugee only meet 20% of this checklist. So how you can really convince the government to change the way they're thinking, and to form a new pathway, to form a new to adapt this model to make it flexible for refugee status is one of the challenges, and we overcome this challenge in Australia. We work with the Australian government, and we overcome this challenge in Australia, and now Australia has new visa of displacement talent visa, which really formed around how they can adapt this model to bring talent in Australia based on this based on their skills, not just humanitarian status. This is worked in Australia, but in different countries they have different sort of laws, and it's very hard. Really, we pilot this model in Australia, and Australia lead the world in this model, but still there is too much to do with other countries just to convince the government to change the way they're thinking about refugees.
Cool. All right. And Nick's second question is, do employment/visa laws obstruct your access to certain countries?
Yes. So visa laws, as I mentioned, it's very different from one country to another. As one example, for example, in Canada, if you want to go as a refugee in Canada, you have to get 2 approvals. One of them from the federal government, another one from the province or from the state. So you have to get 2 approvals rather than 1. In Australia, you only have 1 approval from the government to access to come to Australia. And in Canada, you have to meet certain requirements in IELTS, where this condition was waived in Australia for this visa. So the visa requirement was one of the main challenges for us to make this model happen across the board.
All right. Madhav has a question. He says, is there anything that he can do to help your organization support the goal or its motivation while we're in Brisbane?
So one of the main things or key success for us is just to have more employers engaging in these solutions. So when we have more employers engaging this solution, we have more success stories. We really convince more the Australian government, other businesses to join these solutions. So it's really promoting these solutions in the business community. One of the main things really helping us domestically and international to prove that this model is working in Australia and can work everywhere also. So really more engaging with the business community is one of the main challenges for us.
All right. And Nick has another question. He says, do you have any future plans to expand into more countries and regions?
Yes, we have now. We are now thinking about to go to Europe. We also New Zealand is one of the countries that we will start there, and also Europe. So we're still in discussion with other organizations, because when we go overseas, it's really hard to start this like this solution without, as I mentioned, without having partners in the local country, because they are more know about the laws, and plus the community have business connections. So we are, in our plan is now to go beyond Australia, to go to New Zealand and Europe.
All right, awesome. All right, well, I just want to say a massive thank you, Nirary, to coming out and speaking to us and answering our questions tonight. It's really empowering to see how that technology that we can create can empower and unlock so many people's potential that may potentially get missed. We really appreciate you coming out and
Thank
showing
you.
us that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Coming up next week, guys, for UQCS, on Tuesday we have our fellow committee members Paul, Olivia, and Kenton presenting our very first workshop on React at 6 p.m. And don't forget about our weekly competitive programming group meetups that happen at 5 p.m. on Wednesdays. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, guys, and we hope to see you next time.